It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio set up better be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop Wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This is the Elias Macco Show on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Trudie Mason sitting in for Elias, broadcasting from a rainy Montreal, also looping in Ottawa, Toronto, Windsor, and Vancouver. Good Monday morning, everybody. Our topic now, the best loyalty programs, reward programs for groceries. Now, we're doing this topic at a time when a lot of Canadians are struggling to make ends meet. Everybody's looking to save a buck at the grocery store. You can shop the flyers. You can shop with coupons. You can use loyalty programs to try and stretch your dollar a little bit further by accumulating points on your day-to-day purchases for purchases later. So this is why we're looking at which grocery rewards programs actually deliver the best value. Is it PC Optimum points? Is it Scene Plus rewards? Is it Air Miles? Here to help us tackle the question is Patrick Sojka, founder of RewardsCanada.ca and FrequentFlyerBonuses.com. Patrick, welcome.
Hi, Trudie. Good morning.
So I mentioned three there. Are there any other big rewards programs that you consider an option for grocery shoppers?
For more of us out in the West, you mentioned they're listening in Vancouver. There's a program called More Rewards, which is part of the overweighty food group. They have a bunch of stores kind of in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. But the three you mentioned are definitely the big ones.
So let's break it down in terms of shopping for groceries. Is there any clear front runner, Patrick?
To be honest, not really. They're all pretty equal in terms of earning your points at the stores and redeeming the points at the stores. Some get a little more flexible in where you can use your points afterwards. Like Scene Plus is probably the most flexible because you can use the points for travel, you can redeem them for movies. There's just a lot more options you can do with your points. Whereas PC Optimum is more limited to all the Loblaws group. You can go beyond groceries because you use Shoppers Drug Mart, but they also have Esso and Mobile as well, so they get a gas component. And then you have somebody like Moi Rewards, which is almost strictly just for groceries.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but out in our way in Montreal, it's been my impression that the rewards programs are strongest in stores I don't generally like shopping at because they tend to be across the board more expensive on the products that I buy most often at the supermarket. So it can really vary for sure. You talk about, your Sobeys, Safeway, IGAs, Metros, some people will compare them to, say, like the real Canadian superstores or some of the No Frills and the independent grocers where you may be spending a little bit less. And I think that's where we see the difference. So like a program like PC Optimum, you'll see that you don't earn a point per dollar spent. You only earn on certain items and things like that. And that's how they kind of keep the cost lower. Whereas, your Metro with Moi Rewards, you will be earning points on every dollar you spend. So there's kind of a trade-off, and I know that the smartest shoppers are kind of going to many stores. Some of us, we just can't take that time to go to many stores. But yeah, so definitely there's times where you can get good deals at the stores that seem to be more expensive with points and buying the items that they do have on sale. You're talking about, how flexible these programs are in where you redeem your points. In your experience, do people tend to hoard these points for their big purchases, or are people cashing them out every time they're able?
I think there's still a penchant to hoard, for that, like travel or those bigger rewards. And I actually recommend that with a lot of these loyalty, the grocery type programs, you don't need to do that because there's no additional value in the long run. And in fact, you have the potential of losing value over time because programs do change, and we see them sometimes devalue. So like a lot of these grocery programs, if, I'll use Scene Plus as an example. When you get to 1,000 points, you're redeem for $10 off your groceries. You can do it because that's the same redemption rate for their travel. That's the same redemption rate for their movies. So there's not really a need to hoard. It's the same with PC Optimum. I've seen there were some horror stories where people had hundreds of thousands, even millions of points, and then something happened to their account. There was a lot of security issues with PC Optimum, and they locked these accounts, and people couldn't redeem. When you have a program that's kind of a fixed value, there isn't a need to hold on to them. Use it for those immediate savings if you can.
Well, I know with my PC points card, I use it to buy my Christmas turkey every year. That's
perfect.
That's how I manage it. I accumulate it. I usually have enough for a turkey at the end of the year. It's not big bucks. Now, as also with frequentflyerbonuses.com, if you had a choice between being really dedicated to a points card and being faithful about whipping that card out to get the points, or shopping flyers or coupons, which do you think is most effective at stretching your household budget?
Definitely the credit card points if you are paying off your credit cards. That's the main thing. If you carry a balance, the interest you're paying is way more than the rewards you'll earn. But if you are, financially set and are paying off your credit cards every month, the amount of points you can earn on credit cards is pretty amazing. And a lot of them have what we call grocery accelerators. When you're using them at a grocery store, you're earning 2 times points, 4 times points. Some get up to 6 times points, which is like a 6% return on spending, which is just amazing. So, but you want to combine them all if you can. I mean, if most of the programs like Moi, Scene Plus, PC Optimum, every Thursday they come out with new offers, and you load those offers in your app. Make sure you just do that. It takes just a few seconds. Load the offers, and then you're going to be earning those bonus points on top of your credit card points as well.
When you're talking about credit card points, these are the cash back type cards?
It could be cash back, travel, even the grocery cards. PC Optimum, even though it's a little bit more than groceries, it's mostly for groceries, what people are using it for. So it's any rewards card that's giving you points, miles, dollars, whatever currency you want to call it, on your spending.
Don't those cards usually have an annual fee, though, that you have to take into account before you start, salivating over your savings?
Some do. Most do, yeah. But it depends. There's entry-level cards that do give you rewards that have no annual fees. A very popular card is like the PC Optimum World Elite MasterCard, and that one has no annual fee. There's and others out there that have no annual fees as well. But then the ones that do have annual fees, you start getting better earn rates. You start getting more benefits, like a lot of travel insurance coverage, airport lounge access. So those are all kind of things you have to take into account. It's like, well, am I paying the annual fee just for the rewards, or am I paying the annual fee for the additional benefits and things that I will be using on the credit card?
Do you think that it's worth it for, say, a single person or someone shopping for a couple? Is it worth it to have one of each one of these, points cards in the wallet and to use it? Are the savings all that significant?
Well, it really depends on how much they're spending, but yeah, I think definitely you want to have at least one or two in there. That a lot of these stores and places that you're shopping at or credit cards, if they're offering the rewards and it's not going to cost you any more, like if you do get a no-fee credit card, you should be doing it. Maybe the savings won't be, huge, but when you add it up with all the other things that you're doing to save, it's a little bit more in your wallet.
Patrick Sojka, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Great. Thanks, Trudie. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Patrick Sojka, founder of RewardsCanada.ca and frequentflyerbonuses.com. In a moment, we will speak about the Russia-China partnership and why it should be a concern as Canada seeks closer ties with China. Now, our Prime Minister has said you don't have to agree with a country 100% to do trade with that country. But are we overlooking some dangerous ties that China has that may hurt us in the long run. That's what my next guest is saying. That's the belief, is that we may be setting ourselves up for a very rude awakening. Stay tuned.
It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio setup, that'll be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop Wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
All right, this summer we're switching things up.
Okay, where do you want to go?
Off the top of my head, Montreal, Lac Lémy, Mont-Tremblant, Charlevoix, Trois-Rivières, Quebec City.
Isn't that the exact route for Lotto Quebec's Van Life Campers promo?
I don't know what you're talking about.
This summer, adventure starts at Lotto Quebec's casinos and gaming halls. Enter for free at the Casino de Montreal for your chance to win a custom-built Van Life Campers vehicle and over $145,000 in instant prizes. In collaboration with Canac, Van Life Campers, and Simons.
Your bag's already packed, isn't it?
No.
Conditions apply. 18 and over.
This is CJAD 800.
Listen anywhere, anytime.
At CJAD800.com.
The iHeartRadio app or on your smart speaker.
It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio setup, that'll be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop Wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Lotto Quebec Casino experiences are true regional highlights.
How was the weekend in Tremblant?
Oh, a dream weekend.
Right? The fresh air, the hikes, cozy nights by the fire.
No. After hiking, we had a real feast at Altitude Restaurant, chased aces at the blackjack table, and ended the night at the casino's interactive gaming zone.
Oh, packed weekend.
That was just Saturday. Sunday, we had a little brunch and...
Discover the Casino de Mont-Tremblant, a highlight for your vacation. 18 and over. Wise play. A game must remain a game.
This is the Elias Macko Show on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Trudie Mason sitting in for Elias from our studios in rainy Montreal on this Monday morning. My next guest says we should think twice when we hear our Prime Minister say, well, you know, we don't have to agree 100% with a country's policies in order to expand trade with it, for example. And he is particularly concerned about China and the push by Canada to forge closer trade ties there as we seek other markets to get away from our dependence on the U.S. or to lessen our dependence on the U.S. Charles Burton, a former diplomat at Canada's embassy in Beijing, is now a senior fellow at Synopsis.cz, a China-focused think tank based in Prague. Also the author of The Beaver and the Dragon, How China Outmaneuvered Canada's Diplomacy, Security, and Sovereignty. Charles, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Trudie.
Good morning. What has you worried specifically about the path that Canada is on right now?
Well, I think the revelations that are coming more to the public attention by NATO and the G7 alliance, that China is not as neutral as they claim to be with regard to the Russian action in Ukraine and with regard to the war in Iran. So China is, in fact, providing Russia with the means to further its attempt to take over Ukraine, and once they've got Ukraine, I guess they'll move on to other countries by providing them with technology, parts for weapons, and strategic information. And with regard to Iran, we just heard last week that China is selling directly Manpad's shoulder-fired missiles that will really help the Iranians to counter the U.S. Assault on that country. So the question really is, should we have a strategic partnership and become beholden and dependent on a country like China that's working to empower our enemies, and which could be using this technology and knowledge to further its desire to expand its influence and power in the Canadian Arctic and against NATO in general. So it really is a question of, do we want to deal with China if China is in fact a proxy for the enemies against Canadian security and democracy.
In the National Post opinion piece that you co-wrote with Marcus Kolga, you go into a little bit of detail about just how vulnerable you are. You know, you spoke about Arctic surveillance, defense infrastructure, telecommunications, you know, the drive to develop a weapon, for example, that could bring down Starlink and other communication system. This is what we are either, I guess, indirectly getting into bed with would be the correct way to describe it, Charles?
Yes, I think so. I mean, certainly China is learning a lot from the Russian experience in Ukraine with regard to drones, strategy, how to deal with sanctions, and all of these things that could be useful for China in future, particularly if China decides to take advantage of the U.S. drawing down its weaponry to take action against democratic Taiwan. And then we do have these concerns over the Arctic military exercises between Russia and China around Alaska. And in general, you know, can we really ignore what our strategic partner is doing? And if we're a strategic partner with China, does that make us one remove strategic partners with Russia, Iran and North Korea, you know? So I think we really have to be looking much more carefully at the overall relationship and the implications of getting ourselves dependent on the Chinese market, which then could be used as leverage to moderate our positions in other areas. The Chinese have already suggested that Canada should cease to send members of parliament to Taiwan and cease our freedom of navigation exercises in the Taiwan Strait if we are to expect a continuing of China's promise to open its market to Canadian trade and investment.
Is there a way to contain the threat while at the same time, indulging our need for closer trade ties because we are seeking alternatives to the U.S.? Could we engage with China in a way that would not make us vulnerable?
I think it is possible. I mean, first, one has to appreciate that this idea that China is our second largest trading partner is, China is only less than 4% of our external commodity trade, as opposed to now about 64% to the United States. We do more external commodity trade with the European Union countries put together, about 12% than with China, one country. So actually, the idea that China could be our salvation against the assault on our economy by the Trump tariffs and reshoring policies is really not very realistic. But leaving that aside, I think we can engage in strictly transactional trade with China, the sale of agricultural commodities with no strings attached. But China doesn't want to engage with no strings attached. They want a partnership where they make the promise of market access in exchange for a series of memoranda of understanding, including a scary one that the government won't publicize between the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Chinese Public Security Ministry, which could suggest that we'll be cooperating with Chinese investigations of political dissidents who have sought refuge in Canada. So, there are a whole range of academic and cultural exchanges that China is demanding that we undertake as part of this strategic partnership. And these things all benefit China's strategic interests, the transfer of dual-use military technologies and expanding influence operations and interference operations in our country and elections. And all Canada is getting for it is a promise of increased access to the Chinese market, which may not be fulfilled.
I think the issue now with the debate at this point in time is we have the elbows up movement. There's a lot of support for seeking greater trade ties elsewhere. We have at eye level decisions to make. For example, do I want to buy an electric car made in China? These are individuals. So there's kind of like the policy question of how close we would allow the RCMP to get to China's security apparatus. And then there's our individual question about, am I going to buy a Chinese-made electric car? Am I going to buy Chinese garlic at the grocery store when it comes down to that? It's becoming, I think it's really coming home for Canadians at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's the individual decisions, and then there's the national security decisions. I mean, if you buy the Chinese EV, that EV has the potential to be used for data gathering and espionage purposes. They're full of sensors and cameras. It probably doesn't matter to the individual that China's gathering lots of information on them or where they go or who they're driving with and so on. But in terms of the collective interest of Canada, it's very scary. And the idea that China could use software updates to cripple those EVs if there is conflict between Canada and China is also something that we really have to take very seriously, not to speak of the U.S. threats not to allow Canadian EVs to drive across the border. So if you want to drive your car to Florida, you'll be stopped at the border kind of thing. There are just a lot of aspects there that are of concern, but the bottom line is that the Chinese EVs, because of the very generous Chinese state subsidies, are very competitively priced and have a very sophisticated battery technology. So for the consumer, they're a very attractive option. But for Canada, maybe not so much.
Charles Burton, thank you very much for your time.
It's good to speak with you.
Charles Burton, former diplomat at Canada's embassy in Beijing. When we return in our In-Transit segment, we'll talk about another electric vehicle, another brand of electric vehicle. Tesla has recalled dozens of models in the U.S. The short form explanation is they're too Canadian, but when you get into the detail, it's a lot more understandable. We'll get into that detail coming up.
It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio setup better be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop Wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
All right, this summer we're switching things up.
Okay, where do you want to go?
Off the top of my head, Montreal, Lac-Lémy, Mont-Tremblant, Charlevoix, Trois-Rivières, Quebec City.
Isn't that the exact route for Lotto Quebec's Van Life Campers promo?
I don't know what you're talking about.
This summer, adventure starts at Lotto Quebec's casinos and gaming halls. Enter for free at the Casino de Montreal for your chance to win a custom-built Van Life Campers vehicle and over $145,000 in instant prizes in collaboration with Canac, Van Life Campers, and Simons.
Your bag's already packed, isn't it?
No.
Conditions apply. 18 and over.
CA. This is the Elias Macco Show on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Trudie Mason sitting in for Elias on this Monday morning. You may have seen this story in the news. Tesla is recalling some models in the U.S. because fundamentally they ended up being too Canadian. And the explanation lies in the regulations we have for the vehicles sold in our country and the regulations the U.S. has for vehicles operating there. Sorting it out for us, we welcome Matthew Guy, reporter for driving.ca. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, good morning, Trudie.
Morning. Background this story for us. Which of the Tesla vehicles are we talking about?
So there were 12 Model 3s, those would be the hatchback, the sedans, and then there were 3 Model Ys, which were the SUVs. Those are probably Tesla's most popular vehicles. And so there were 15 in total that were recalled in the States because, as you said, they were a little bit too Canadian, and not because they're playing hockey or drinking maple syrup out of a bottle or anything like that. You're right when you say that it had to do with some safety standards.
So these were owned by people who bought them in Canada and later moved and tried to transfer the registration in the U.S.?
Yes, and from my understanding, they had a letter of clearance from Tesla which allowed them to do that. And there's all kinds of different paperwork when you bring a car across the border, and it seems like that's part of it and allows them to bring those vehicles into the States. And at issue were the vehicles were manufactured at the time, either in the Shanghai location of Tesla's manufacturing facility, or Berlin. And they complied with the Canadian vehicle safety standards at the time instead of the quote-unquote federal vehicle safety standards, which is what the Americans follow.
How do they differ, these standards? What was involved in these Teslas that did not meet the U.S. standards?
Primarily, it seems like there were airbags for your knees, so knee airbags. And in the States, they may be driver's side only or include the passenger side, just depending on make and model. And they deploy from underneath the dash to keep occupants' legs from banging into the dash, for example. But the reason why they have those in the States is that not every state has a seatbelt law. So these knee airbags in some vehicles are there to keep unbelted drivers and passengers from going into the dashboard and such, for restraining unbelted people when they are, if they were to be in a crash. And because every Canadian province has those, we don't require those airbags up here in this country, and neither do they in the EU, for example.
I'm kind of shaking my head at any jurisdiction that doesn't have seatbelt laws. I don't get it. Even when I was learning to drive way back in the day, we were taught that's the first thing you put on, and when you get in the vehicle is your seatbelt. So these airbags were not included in the Canadian models. Were the owners not able to get them retrofitted? Is that not something you can add aftermarket, I think it's called?
Aftermarket would be a great term for it. And from what I understand, it would have been, if Tesla has decided to actually buy back these cars, it seems like it would have been cheaper for them to buy back the cars and have, hopefully, I guess they want these people to buy new Teslas from them rather than retrofit them. It's my understanding that they could be retrofitted because of the design of the dashboard, but it probably takes a lot of work, more so than buying the cars back, which is quite the statement when it comes to airbags. They certainly do cost a lot of money, and if anyone has been, in a crash or had to repair a car, the airbags sometimes can be some of the most costly parts of the repair, for sure.
Takes a lot of MacGyvering.
Yes.
Were the owners satisfied with the buyback? You mentioned, I guess Tesla is hoping they will buy another Tesla. No guarantee of that. Was the buyback generous?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I haven't heard any complaints. None of these 15 people have come up and been making a lot of noise online or anything to say we are completely unsatisfied with this. So I would imagine that the amount was sufficient. Otherwise, we would have heard a lot more from that side of the conversation for sure. And then those cars that are coming into Canada and coming into the States, they do have the different safety standards in them. So I would say that Tesla is hoping, hey, I hope you're going to, replace your Tesla with a Tesla, but this time one that's built in the States.
Well, let's talk about those safety standards, because I didn't realize the differences were that big. I figured, you're building for a different, there's bound to be different regulations, but an entire safety system in the form of a knee-level airbag is a pretty significant system, to require or not require, depending on jurisdictions. Do you know of any other big differences between the Canadian and American regulations that might trip up someone moving into the States with a Canadian purchased car?
That's a really good point. That would be the biggest one that I know of. There are some smaller things, and there have been some other small recalls in the past from some other manufacturers where something sneaks out the factory with, a Canadian sticker on it that says kilometers per hour instead of miles per hour, or kilos instead of pounds. Small stuff like that, But still, they want to have the correct unit of measure for the country in which the vehicle is sold. So sometimes recalls like that happen too. And it is my understanding that those stickers would be available and have to be put on, allegedly, right? Whether you put them on or not, you have been given the sticker, and that way they would be able to, quote unquote, be ready for the American market. But yes, the airbags is the biggest thing to my knowledge. And some cars, like those Teslas, were designed with that in mind, to be able to be sold in multiple markets like the EU and Canada, which doesn't require them. And then the American, I think it's just New Hampshire is the only state in that union without a mandatory seatbelt law for adults.
Is it in overall, in general, safety-wise, are the rules more stringent in Canada or the U.S.? This is one example with the knee-level airbag where the U.S. seems to be more stringent, but are there others where it's not?
I wouldn't say not. I would say both countries are definitely equal in terms of safety. There's nothing that I would be, worried or concerned about driving in either country. It's neat that, especially with a lot of the conversations lately about, decoupling some things from the States and having more trade with the EU and things of that nature, there have been some people in the automotive industry saying, hey, why don't we try to hew to some more of the EU regulations, and that might bring some more choice over here for Canadian customers in terms of buying cars. So that's a conversation I think that's going to happen even more feverishly as these conversations go on with different trade matters that have been going on in the world lately.
Yeah, we were just in our last segment talking about the Chinese EVs that are coming into the market. That's a wild card, coming into our market too. We've had some demo models arrive in Montreal to a little bit of fanfare, and they're now available for people to go and look at, even though they're not being sold here yet. Are they on your radar, Matthew? A possible purchase, yay or nay?
I think I would love to see one. I know that some of my colleagues have driven some over in that country, and I believe one of my colleagues was there in Montreal when I think it was Dongfeng was the brand that showed a lot of their cars in Montreal last week or 2 weeks ago. So it is. I do really think that I would really like to see one, sit in one, see the quality and drive it and see how the range compares to electric vehicles that are already available here and such. So it's an interesting 6 months left to the year for sure for anyone in the automotive industry.
No, and hoping, of course, that we're not being spied upon while we're doing our test drives. To Matthew Guy, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Matthew Guy is a reporter for driving.ca. When we come back, we are going to tackle the question of what universities should be doing about artificial intelligence. And my guest is saying, you know what, instead of trying to ban it, instead of trying to regulate it, instead of treating it like plagiarism, what you should be doing is teaching students how to use it as a tool and setting up courses so that there are still AI-free segments where they have to actually use their own brains and develop critical thinking skills. This is coming from an academic here at McGill University here in Montreal. Stay tuned.
It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio setup better be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop Wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Lotto Quebec casino experiences are true regional highlights.
How was the weekend in Tremblant?
Oh, a dream weekend.
Right? The fresh air, the hikes, cozy nights by the fire.
No. After hiking, we had a real feast at Altitude Restaurant, chased aces at the blackjack table, and ended the night at the casino's interactive gaming zone.
Oh, packed weekend.
That was just Saturday. Sunday, we had a little brunch and
discover the Casino de Mont-Tremblant, a highlight for your vacation. 18 and over. Wise play. A game must remain a game.
This is CJAD 800.
For best of audio and a list of podcasts, go to CJAD800.com.
It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio setup better be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop Wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Lotto Quebec casino experiences are true regional highlights.
How was the weekend in Tremblant?
Oh, a dream weekend.
Right? The fresh air, the hikes, cozy nights by the fire.
No. After hiking, we had a real feast at Altitude Restaurant, chased aces at the blackjack table, and ended the night at the casino's interactive gaming zone.
Oh, packed weekend.
That was just Saturday. Sunday, we had a little brunch and
discover the Casino de Mont-Tremblant, a highlight for your vacation. 18 and over. Wise play. A game must remain a game.
This is the Elias Macco Show on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Trudie Mason sitting in for Elias. Last week, we tackled the subject of artificial intelligence as it is being used by university students. And I had the pleasure of speaking to an academic from McGill University who says it is time for a complete rethink of how schools are dealing with this by trying to limit it, regulate it, ban it, treat it like plagiarism. She says that professors have to think differently about artificial intelligence. Anna Jahn, Executive Director of the Center for Media, Technology and Democracy at McGill University's Max Bell School of Public Policy. You teach at McGill University. Have you seen your students increasingly relying on AI? Have you been forced to address this in your own classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every professor I know and every student, frankly, I know has been using and is more and more using AI every day for most tasks and for most writing, frankly, or assignments that are happening at university. So it's very widespread, and the numbers show that. So the latest survey in Canada showed that about at least 70% of students at least admit to using it almost daily. And the numbers are even higher in the US and in the UK.
We've heard from a number of universities, and you mentioned this in the opinion piece you wrote for the Globe and Mail, have decided that using AI is a form of cheating. They're working on ways to detect AI use, or they're talking about designing courses that are AI proof, having in-person exams written only longhand with a paper and pen and that type of thing. Why do you feel that's the wrong approach to the rise of AI use by students?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's, I totally understand why universities, first of all, try to grapple it with this way. It is completely challenging. So AI is completely challenging the ways universities have in the past evaluated and assessed students' performances. This was the initial reaction. Oh my God, what do we do? We can't really give take-home exams anymore because we know that students will use AI. So, it's clear. I understand why universities, first of all, are concerned with the cheating problem. I think almost now 4 or 5 years since the arrival of ChatGPT, we really need to tackle this problem a lot more broadly, because I think AI challenges all the assumptions we've made on how students learn and what they should be learning, but also I think ultimately how they can use these tools very effectively.
There is still the concern that a student using AI is not doing the thinking necessary to really learn, truly learn, to internalize what they may have read, to work through it, to puzzle through it, to ask the questions about the material and find the answers. That when an AI is doing this, can you really say a student has learned anything in a course? That concern isn't going away. Or maybe you disagree.
No, I completely agree. It is a huge concern. But this is exactly why I think universities needs to respond very differently to this. I think all the studies, and there's a really interesting study by at MIT that exactly show that kind of what people call the cognitive debt or the cognitive offloading that students themselves are very worried about is indeed happening. And so students do not learn the same and are not developing the critical thinking skills and the judgment that they need later on when they use AI. So this is why I would argue we need to completely redesign how we teach and say we need to think very hard about what are the really unique and important skills for any program that we need to force, I guess, or try ways for students to develop without AI. And then at the same time, though, there need to be a space where they also learn how to use these tools very effectively.
Set us on that path. Set us on. Can you give us for instance, where a course or a course of study, a field can be redesigned to do exactly that? Teach what you really need to quote unquote learn, but allow this window for AI use and teach the students how to use AI for a certain part of their work.
I will try, but I think we're very early on. And I think ultimately the answer is it's going to look very different from program to program, department to department. But my hunch is at this stage that there needs to be very dedicated in person, without any, frankly, laptops and technology spaces, probably with fewer students, where we basically sit down with also a very different ratio between teacher and student, and to develop these skills. So that could be, through discussion, of course, that could be through handwriting exercises, etc. This means also that, of course, the big model of massive lectures where most students sit on their laptops and also not really following and then watch maybe a video and then write something with AI, this is no longer working. So I think what we're looking at, and again, I don't have the answer exactly what this is going to look like, but I think we need to really have dedicated spaces where there is no technology so that some of these skills can be developed. And again, though, at the same time, I think there is a responsibility of universities to teach students how to use the tools and be at the cutting edge in a way of these tools so that they can also go into a labor market where they will be expected to know these tools and to master them.
You mentioned it in your piece in the Globe that cost is going to be an issue because those big, just about every intro to fill in the blank course is an auditorium course these days where it's 100 or more students, sometimes hundreds of students sitting in this gigantic auditorium, or they're online and they're listening to a professor talk, and sometimes the lectures are pre-recorded and that type of stuff. It's expensive to do otherwise. So can universities afford the path that you're endorsing?
Well, not right now, and not with the current funding arrangements and not how they're set up currently. So I think this is why, though, I think there's really an opportunity and a real call for transformative change of these institutions and really tough conversations in every government to think about how do we fund our educational institutions differently. So I think the cost for a different model that is much more, in a way, personnel intensive is going to be an important one. And I'm not suggesting that, there needs to be real trade-offs made here. But I think but I think that's the opportunity, because at the end of the day, the risk is going to be that really our universities are becoming, I don't want to say obsolete, because I still think, a lot of people will rely on certain certification and obviously, a degree. But I think more and more, and I see this happening already with students and my own children, they're asking what is actually the value they're getting from universities if they don't feel they actually are being challenged and they're learning. And so I think in order to survive for universities, they will have to do things very differently. I say this, all of this, knowing that universities and educational, institutions change very, very slowly. And so this will not be an overnight change. This will take time. The sooner we get started and the sooner we start to experiment, what could this different model look like where we don't have any technology? What would be actually the cost? We're going to be more and more in a world where we're going to have a two-tier system where some of the really private institutions that, by the way, are doing this already now, are going to be really far ahead and are going to kind of embrace this different model. And large public institutions potentially will be really left behind.
Anna Jahn, Executive Director of the Center for Media, Technology and Democracy at McGill University's Max Bell School of Public Policy. Coming up, conspiracy theories and how to spot them. You're listening to the Elias Macko Show on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio set up, that'll be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop Wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Lotto Quebec casino experiences are true regional highlights.
How was the weekend in Tremblant?
Oh, a dream weekend.
Right? The fresh air, the hikes, cozy nights by the fire.
No. After hiking, we had a real feast at Altitude Restaurant, chased aces at the blackjack table, and ended the night at the casino's interactive gaming zone.
Oh, packed weekend.
That was just Saturday. Sunday, we had a little brunch and...
Discover the Casino de Mont-Tremblant, a highlight for your vacation. 18 and over. Wise play. A game must remain a game.
You're listening to the Voice of Montreal.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
An iHeartRadio station.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.